away, and Jay Will here, and Jalen Rose there. Jalen Rose is live this morning in Detroit. Good morning, Jay. We are delighted that you'll be able to jump in. Good to see you. 4 days until free agency begins, and here's the big news. Woj yesterday setting Twitter on fire, reporting that Rockets general manager Daryl Morey is interested in exploring a sign and trade for Jimmy Butler. Here was Woj in our first hour on Get Up.
He doesn't have any salary cap space to go chase a max free agent, but he's going to try to find a way to get Jimmy Butler with the Rockets. Essentially what Houston needs to do, Daryl Morey, is to convince Jimmy Butler to force or push a sign and trade with the Sixers to Houston. His leverage would be essentially Butler's, hey, if you don't do a sign and trade, get some assets back from Houston, then I will sign into salary cap space elsewhere in the league, and you'll lose me for nothing. So that's the case that Morey will make to Jimmy Butler as we kick off free agency on Sunday.
Jalen, Woj went on to tell us that they would almost certainly have to give up Clint Capella and Eric Gordon to make that deal work. What is your reaction?
I love this. This is why we're getting ready for June 30th at 6 p.m. And when you go tiers of free agency, you got KD, you got Kawhi, but right under that is Klay, Kyrie, and Jimmy Butler. And if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, here's what you do. You offer him a 5-year deal, a maximum contract that nobody else can offer, and you give him a chance to sign it. If he decides he's not going to sign it, then you got to allow him to go to Houston, but take a $30, $40 million haircut in order to go to his hometown. Now, I will say this, however, no state taxes in Texas versus you guys know how expensive it is living on the East Coast. But either way, basketball-wise, after playing in Minnesota, actually playing against the Rockets in the playoffs, Daryl Morey has always been trying to get Jimmy Butler. He allegedly offered 4 first-round picks for him a couple of years ago. So if this is able to come to fruition, it'll be great for the Houston Rockets.
Well, let me just follow quickly here. Put all the money, the mechanics, and everything else aside. James Harden, Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler on the same team. Do you like the fit?
I really like the fit because Chris Paul is still a productive player. They just didn't allow his usage to be what I think it should be as somebody that can initiate offense, in particular mid-range. James Harden, I voted for this guy to be MVP. We know about the 40-point, 50-point, 60-point games that he can throw up. And Jimmy Butler becomes the rock, the balance, a guy that can lock down on the perimeter, also get his own shot. And those two guys can play quality minutes, CP3 and Butler, without James Harden on the floor. I talk so very much about how he behaves when he isn't initiating the offense. I think having a player like Jimmy Butler, he'd be forced to be a teammate in those scenarios versus distorting the spacing and looking disinterested when somebody else had the ball.
J. Rose, I think it sounds perfect. I think this is where analytics and the eye test clash, right? Because on paper, you're like, oh, we're adding Jimmy Butler to a team that, he's like a hyped up Trevor Ariza, right? Can shoot way better than Trevor Ariza. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying, though, is the personality clashes, though, is something that really concerns me and something you have to pay attention to. Like, let's not forget about how Jimmy Butler got his way out of Minnesota. We talked to Tibbs about that and the young players that he had to mold and how that worked out. Now you're going to
how they don't play defense.
How they don't play defense. So now you're going to take James Harden and put him in the same scenario with Jimmy Butler. Like, don't you see that as a chance for these guys to clash when it already doesn't feel like they're on the same page to begin with? And then you're going to give up Clint Capella, a guy that doesn't need the ball, that actually does all the dirty work for you?
Well, Jay, first off, you're getting from under Clint Capella's contract. While he's shown to be a skilled big that can block some shots, catch some lobs, he hasn't been outstanding in the last couple of playoffs. So that's one of the things that they're looking to do is really rid themselves of his contract for a guy that is a quality starting center, but not a game-changing one. And you bring Jimmy Butler in to be another seasoned veteran, to be a leader. You want it to be a little combustible because all of those guys want the same thing. They've come up short in the playoffs, each of them. Jimmy Butler was on Philly this year, heartbreaking loss to the Toronto Raptors. And it's wide open next year without the Golden State Warriors being healthy. If I'm the Rockets, I definitely try to do something like this to roll the dice.
All I'm saying is the one team that you lost to is no longer in basketball. Like the one team you lost to the past 2 years in the playoffs is no longer assembled with KD being out, potentially not returning, Klay Thompson being out for a major portion of the year. Like if you want to roll the dice like that, I understand it. But like I'm still going to hold on to the fact that I still think this team, the way they're currently composed, has a chance to win the West.
You and I disagree on that strongly. I think that Houston's window has shut based upon what happened in this year's postseason. That's why I like the idea of trying to shake up the mix a little bit with something here. But at the end of the day, if you're Philly, I think you got to try and find a way to keep Jimmy Butler. That's the team that should want to run it back. They could win the championship next year in that Eastern Conference. Jalen, stay with me for this one because there was other news coming out of the East yesterday that could be very significant. Raptors president of basketball operations, Masai Ujiri, putting to rest any rumors of him leaving the team during his season-ending media availability yesterday. Next up for Ujiri, trying to re-sign Kawhi Leonard.
I've had very good meetings with him the last few days, and yes, he's told me, and honestly, I'd rather keep that conversation between me and Kawhi for now. And for me, they've been positive, and he challenges me the same way that I challenge him, and I think the goal is the same, and I appreciate that.
So he's talking like a man who's very confident that Kawhi Leonard is coming back. It should be pointed out that no player has won Finals MVP and played for a different team the following season. The only one who didn't return to his team was Michael Jordan, who retired twice after all of that. Woj was with us talking about this an hour ago as well.
What Masai Ujiri has done, which is really remarkable, is build a relationship with Kawhi Leonard. That's not easy to do in less than a year. It took the Spurs years to do that. Given that this was a player who was not happy about being traded there, who really at the very beginning of his arrival in Toronto just saw this as a one-year way station on his way to somewhere else. And what Masai did, what the Raptors organization did, was make a compelling case to him that they were a viable alternative long-term. They closed a gap that there was a tremendous gulf from where they started to where they are now on the cusp of July free agency.
So, Jalen, the Masai Ujiri domino was one we were waiting to see fall. If he departed, I think a lot of people suggested that could be big trouble for Toronto trying to keep Kawhi. He's staying. What do you make of all of this?
I believe Kawhi's going to stay as well. And here's a couple of things to get people to think about if he decides to leave. He missed over 20 games due to load management. Yet in the Eastern Conference, his teammates were still able to hold it down and go like 17-4. If he plays like that next year and misses that many games, in the West, I don't think his squad going to be able to hold it down that much, number one. Number two, if he decides to go back to Los Angeles, the Lakers just acquired Anthony Davis to go with LeBron James. The Clippers are still playing in the Lakers building. It would be one thing if they already had hanging from the rafters. For a Clippers team that don't have a home just yet, I just don't see that as being the equal to staying in Toronto, where they load managed you, you were able to win a championship, you could get top dollar, and a nation is going to treat you like a king. I believe he stays along with Masai.
J. Rose, I agree with you on this one. I think he does stay. The next question of staying is, do you secure the bag long term? Right? Like, I know you would have secured the bag long-term, J. Rose, at this point in your career. It's a lot of money that you're leaving on the table. And my thing is, everybody goes, oh, it's just do a 1-and-1. And look, Kevin Durant did a 1-and-1. He left $160 million left on the table. And then he had an injury on that last year of the deal. And I know this is a point of contention for everybody. But my thing is, it's easy to sit up there and say, well, you're still going to be offered the max regardless after a 1-and-1. That's not necessarily the case. It depends upon the injury that you have.
Jalen, 5 years for Kawhi in Toronto or the 1-and-1?
I think he does not do 5 years. I believe he does 1-and-1. And Jay, here's a different way I want you to think about it. And all your points are exactly right. But when you're LeBron, you're KD, and you're Kawhi, those are elite players. And with load management, the game not being as physical, you're not required to play 4 games in 5 nights. A lot of times these superstar players don't have to practice after they log heavy minutes. Their career span is a lot longer. So we can't look at 30 years old anymore like, okay, this guy can't be around another 7 to 10 years. Look at somebody like Al Horford. He's in his mid-30s. Somebody's, probably Dallas, for example, is going to offer him a 4-year deal at about $100 million. So for Kawhi and for KD, there will be opportunities to make up that money in basketball and obviously in endorsements because they're able to secure it in that fashion as well.
Quickly, though, Jalen, can we just confirm you would have secured the bag?
1,000%. J-Rose taking the bag in Toronto.
Yes.
I know you, J-Rose. I know we hung out on T-Dot
I
too
signed
now.
2 contracts. I signed a 6-year and I signed a 7-year, and I was done. That's how you do it. Drop mic.
Okay, very good. Let's get to the next piece of business. This is actually serious. I think this was underreported yesterday. Andre Iguodala, who's